The home of jump racing. This is where the magic happens. Feel like a Cheltenham favourite with Paddy Power.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Christmas edition of Road to Cheltenham. Are you feeling Christmassy, Ruby?
I am. Can't wait for Christmas, actually. I'm looking forward to it. So everything is pretty much organised. I say it like I've organised it, but Gillian has everything organised. So yeah, I'm looking forward to Christmas.
Yeah, Steve and I are not organised, not in any way, shape or form. And any organisation that has been done is purely down to Steve. We've got the tree, we've ordered the turkey, and we've sorted out the booze. So, is there anything else that's necessary? I don't think
you're happy. You sounds like you're happy with that, anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's change the subject to something I didn't think that we would be talking about. I certainly didn't think we'd be talking about it when we stood next to him in episode 2 of this series of Road to Cheltenham, and that is the retirement of Davy Russell. He rode Liberty Dance to victory in the listed mares novice hurdle at Thurles on Sunday, and he hung up his boots. That's the colossus of the weighing room retiring.
Last of the lads born in the 70s, yeah. But yeah, he was a huge character. He was a brilliant jockey. He didn't leave much behind him, but it was nice to see him retiring his way. I obviously did think he would have retired at some stage, but I didn't see it coming last Sunday at Thurles. I thought he would ride at Christmas, but he made the decision and he bowed out the way he wanted to do it. But look, he was a brilliant jockey, a fierce competitor, and you knew he was in the races.
We thought the best way to pay tribute to him would be to analyse some of his very best rides, and you did too. So John at Vintage Mary 1, you might remember him, Ruby, from last week, sending us a tweet which was accompanied by ABBA's Money, Money, Money. Unfortunately, no tune to accompany this one, but he asked us to analyse one of Davy Russell's 1,549 winning rides. He did correct himself afterwards. That's not me just correcting him. Anyway, he says, no doubt a masterclass in horsemanship from his perspective was Whisper's win in the 2017 Dipper. So that is going to be our first analyse this, and Ruby's also got one of his own.
Yeah, so we will have a look at Whisper. Whisper, to me, wasn't a spectacular jumper. 5th last fence. He's awkward. He doesn't arch himself behind. But Davy never slows him down. 4th last fence. He keeps squeezing forward. Candazobo's jumping much better. Down the hill to the 3rd last. Candazobo's much better. Whisper's okay. Off the home turn, and now Davy has his eyes set on how to get to Candazobo. Now, Candazobo makes a mistake, and as soon as he does, Davy Russell, with a good jump at the second last, smells an opportunity, and he sends Whisper to the last fence. And to me, got a jump out of him that I didn't think Whisper had in him. Flies the last, and that's the difference between winning and losing. Then it's all out to the line as Sam Twiston Davis gets a rally out of Candazobo. But that's what Davy Russell could do, was make horses jump and get horses jumping at the right time. And Whisper wasn't a spectacular jumper, but when Davy needed him, the second last and the last, that to me was the difference in winning and losing there.
The race that I really remember is him winning narrowly in a 3-way go to the line with Juvenile and Distant Thunder on Joe's Edge in the 2007 William Hill Trophy. But it wasn't my choice that is the other analysis. It's your choice. So out of all of Davy's great rides, which one did you want to pick?
And I could have picked any amount of them. But to me, it was conflated at the Dublin Racing Festival. Galvin last Christmas, he just didn't give up. But at the Dublin Racing Festival, this was tactics. It was decision making. I love this. So throw it on, Ken Boy. Were in front. They went an even gallop without going mad, but Davy grabs a hold of the race going to the last ditch, gets a good jump out of Clonflated, but it's around the bend to the second last and over the second last where he wins it. So he starts to quicken to the second last, gets a good jump, but he never drops his own body into the saddle. He just sticks his legs either side of Clonflated and squeezes him away from the second last, and he's gone to the bend. No signal to his opposition that he's about to set sail. He was just gone, using his legs. And then down to the last fence, he's 42. He's coming back from an injury after breaking his neck. He goes to the last like a 19-year-old. Just lies down and Conflated neck. Now, Conflated doesn't make the jump. He puts down. But it's still, Davy just went down there. Not a care in the world. Not a thought on where he'd been, what he'd come back from. And he looked 19. He didn't look 42. I just thought that was magic to watch.
When Davy spoke on his retirement, he was saying that he was pleased that he never lost his bottle, and there's an example of him never doing that. you were riding against him, what was his trademark hallmark thing that you'd feel when you were riding against him?
Yeah, he did funny way with his elbows. It always seemed to get out and he'd be coming. I was sure thought once there maybe it was his right arm, but actually if we were going the other way around, it'd be his left arm.
He's a competitor.
He was a competitor. He was like what is not the dark arts. He knew every trick in the trade, and that's why it was fun to ride against him because it was a challenge, and he was aggressive.
And my admiration for him as well, just grew when he fought back from breaking his neck and to get back right to the top level and deliver the kind of rides that you have just described there.
It's like when you're young, you don't understand disappointment. Yeah, you don't. But the older you get, the more you realize, you are fallible. So to be able to do what he did at that time of his life, take my hat off to it.
Absolutely. So Davy Russell, 3 times champion jump jockey in Ireland, 58 Grade 1 winners, the 9th winning most jump jockey of all time, forever associated with Tiger Roll, 2 back-to-back Grand Nationals in 2018 and 2019. He's won a Cheltenham Gold Cup as well on Lord Windermere, one of 25 Cheltenham Festival winners. Davy Russell, we salute you. Now it's time to have a look at the staying chases. We're both going to look back on what's happened this week because there is stuff to talk about, and also look ahead to the key targets. And it won't just be for the long distance staying chases. We'll also be talking about the intermediates. We start with an intermediate distance, the 2 mile 4 of the John Durkan Chase that was rescheduled at Punchestown on Monday. And Ruby, it saw the return of Galopin de Champs up against Fakir Dudari, also making his seasonal debut. Galopin de Champs was fantastic in victory, wasn't he?
I thought he was too, and it was the manner. Paul Townend commented on after how professional he was. I thought the same, and I must say, watching it live, I was a little worried early in the race because he was so relaxed. Like Late Ambition booked out and went a good gallop in front, and at the first fence, even when Galopin de Champs shortened in and popped it. Last year, early as a novice, he was letting fly and taking fences on. And when they jumped the 4th fence up the home straight, he's really behind the bridle. I was watching it live thinking, oh my God, why is he so behind the bridle? But that's just the way he went through the race. And if you watched him then the whole way down the back straight, what was so different, watch him against Fakir Dudari. This is the 8th fence. Fakir Dudari gets a little bit of ground. Same at the 9th. Fakir is getting the advantage in the air. And again at the last ditch, when Fakir's in front of him, or Galopin's in front of Fakir, Fakir jumps back up to Galopin. That advantage he had as a novice of getting ground in the air was gone against open horses. So up to the 3rd last fence, you're thinking, what's in the locker? Brilliant jump at the 3rd last fence. And when he lands, he just latches on and it's away with him. Down to the 2nd last fence, he's really neat and nimble. And then he starts to lengthen and he quickened all the way to the line. Great jump at the last again. And he got home really well. But it was the manner of how he did it, how he settled, how he was popping instead of letting fly. And he didn't need the advantage that he had as a novice, which was he's jumping against the older horses. That was never going to happen. It had to be a performance, and I think it was a performance.
I totally agree. That sort of unfettered flamboyance had gone, but not the authoritativeness of the victory. He still won by 13 lengths. And this, I thought it just boded really well, the way in which he settled, the way in which he was much more efficient in terms of his energy usage for getting to the very top table in open Grade 1 company.
Yeah, exactly, because that was an issue with him last year. And that's why we said on this show that he would run shorter in trip than a lot of people thought he would. Whereas when I watched the John Durkan, I automatically thought, go up in trip, go out in trip. He has the pace at 2.5, don't get me wrong, but he does look now like a horse that's going to get much further and stay much further. He races like a staying chaser now, whereas last year he raced like a 2-miler or an intermediate horse. So he is learning. And look, should look back at him last year. You can see it with him in Leopardstown, even on his first run, the beginner's chase. Now I know they're going slow, but the position of Paul Townend's hands away from what is the 2nd last fence as he comes into the home straight, they're up off him. He's trying to hold Galopin de Champs. That never happened in the John Durkan. He was always settled behind the bridle. And of course, then if you watched him at the Dublin Racing Festival, the last ditch, what we're talking, he should have taken an extra stride here and popped. He didn't. He let fly and just got there. That was gone as well in the John Durkan. He was relaxed. He was making the right decisions to jump. He was getting in. And then when Paul needed him at the 3rd last, that jump was there. So I thought it was really professional. And I must say, I thought it was exciting to watch.
Yeah, I agree that the potential that's there. He's hardened as favourite in the Boodles Cheltenham Gold Cup market. He is 2-1 in a place, but largely 7-4. Paddy Power have him at 13-8. Talking about best prices, and this will be relevant as we go through this section because obviously there's some key players in this division running next week. L'Empresse 6-1 best, Absolute are 9-1, Protector at 11-1, Nobu Yates 12-1. All of those are best prices. If we have a look at the Ryanair chase, Galopin de Champs is there, and he's second favourite behind Allaho in some books. We've had a tweet from Philip Isherwood who says, any chance that Galopin de Champs goes Ryanair if Allaho doesn't make it? Looks quite pacey to me. Now this, as you've just said, it picks up on the conversation we were having this time last year, but that was novice company. That was a horse learning his trade, getting towards the Cheltenham Gold Cup, and I don't know, the idea, Allaho is hopefully going to be there with the Ryanair. In the scenario that he isn't, I still don't see Willie Mullins going away from the Gold Cup with Galopin de Champs, do you?
Not unless he proves that he doesn't stay. So if he's next start, wherever that may be, probably the Dublin Racing Festival, but were he to look like a non-stayer in the Irish Gold Cup, yes, of course he could then run in the Ryanair. I don't think he will. I think he will look like a stayer on his next start and he will run in the Gold Cup, but that option will be there for him if he looks like a non-stayer. But that's the only way it'll happen.
While we were having a conversation about the horses in this division, we were contacted by Steve and James about a certain Monkfish. Remember him? He's available.
Just about.
He's available at 50-1 for the Cheltenham Gold Cup if you want him. Of course, he is the winner of the 2021 Brown Advisory. He was then beaten by Colreevy at Punchestown in April of that season, and he's been off since with a tendon injury. But Stephen was saying, has Ruby got any updates on Monkfish? It's in many bets for me in the Gold Cup, but wondering if I should give up on them now and start again. Point of order, it's he and she in the road to Cheltenham Village. There's no it's. Just bear that in mind, Stephen, next time. Just remember. Anyway, Joe Chambers, who you'll know, Ruby, is the racing manager to Rich and Susanna Ritchie. He has replied in saying, in an effort to be helpful, he's stepping up in his exercise, which I should stress is slightly more than trotting, but no more. If we get him back this season for a run, then great. But no one has any idea when that might be. He won't be rushed. For me, this is sort of, he goes in the kind of top of the game category. He's a really big frame of a horse, and it seems to me that both of them couldn't really stand training that well.
No, Monkfish is a massive horse. Like he is, and you couldn't believe what weight he is actually, because he doesn't look that broad. He's quite narrow, but when you weigh him, he's a colossal weight as well. He is bone like timber. He is proper timber. But no, and will he make it back? To me, it would look highly unlikely, Lydia, that he would make March. I'd say no chance. But anyway, he is stepping up in his training, but I can't see it being this year.
Okay, well, that's the update on Monkfish. We're now going to look ahead, and we'll start with the obvious place on Boxing Day, and that is a preview of the King George VI chase, the kind of horses that hopefully will be facing Galopin de Champs later on in the season. Right, so this market is very interesting. Brave Man's Game, the winner over the course and distance of the Quarto Star this time last year. He has been the long-standing favourite, but when L'Empresse was confirmed as being likely to be heading to the King George if there was enough rain, it meant that he very much shortened and was challenging Brave Man's Game for favourite. Plenty of others in there as well. I thought we'd start, Ruby, by just you envisaging how you think this year's King George is going to be run.
Well, I think any race that you have Frode on in is a help, because he's going to line up, and I can see Bryony will line him up wide as she always does, like she did 2 years ago when they won it, and she will go forward on Frode on and set a good pace. Like obviously she got involved in a duel with Manila Indo last year, and they both capsized, but he is a guaranteed pace angle here, so it's going to be truly run. Usually is. L'Empresse, he'll line up handy-ish, but Charlie Deutsch won't allow Bryony to slow it down. Because even in last year's Brown Advisory, when they got to the ditch up the hill and Derek Fox wanted to slow it down the High Senior, Charlie Deutsch took it off him on L'Empresse and jumped to the front at the 7th. So I can see Frodon making it, but when he goes to slow it down, I can see L'Empresse pressing him straight away. And then where do the rest sit? So I think Harry Cobden will ride Brave Man's Game, much like he rode him in last year's Cato Star. He'd line him up towards the inside, but in the second row of horses, and he'd be riding him at the turn of foot that he has. He'll be close enough, but he won't be committing him. Hitman, look at him, I suppose, in the old row, and he was sort of mid-division. He'd be somewhere around Brave Man's Game. And Envoy Allen, I wouldn't be surprised if he was behind him. Now, the one I didn't see coming when I was doing this was a high senior. Obviously, he is now running. So where will he be? Well, he's going to be up there with Frodon and Lompresse. He goes a little bit to his right, but he's going to have to get into a really good rhythm, or all of a sudden a high senior could be the one that's getting in the way of the horses in the second rank. But that's how I see it being run. Royal Pagay, Eldorado Allen. Royal Pagay, even if he runs, he'd probably drop in. Eldorado Allen will sit fourth or fifth, but I just personally don't think he's quite good enough to win it. But he'll still be in there boxing. But that's the way I see it. I think it'll be a strongly run race, and I think Frodon will go a strong gallop, but the gallop will allow Lompresse to warm up. It won't get Lompresse out of his comfort zone. And then when Charlie Deutsch is happy, I can see Lompresse leading past the winning post with a circuit to go.
Yes, I can see that too. One of our regular correspondents, Giants Causeway, he's been in touch, and he's picked up on Andy Edwards. He's the owner of Lompresse. His comments to the Racing Post. He says that Andy has suggested that Kempton might not be Lompresse's bag. Does Ruby believe that the horse needs a stiff track, or should Kempton be fine? He had the pace to hold his position over 2.5 miles. I know it was in novice company, but in the Scilly Isles. And as you said, he went on quite a long way out in the Brown Advisory. I didn't really envisage Kempton being an issue for Lompresse, so I've been interested by Andy Edwards' feeling that it might be. What's your view?
I don't think it will either. And you look at different King George winners, obviously going back a long way when you start talking about Seymour Business, but he was the stayer that won a couple of King Georges. It's what happens to you in the first mile. If you go obviously on the stair, you get put on your head in the first mile, then they start blaming the track because you just got on your head in the first mile. But I think that Frodon will go quick enough, but I don't think he'd be quick enough to put Lompresse on his head, and Lompresse will build into the race. I wouldn't be worried about the track for him. He's won Ascot right-handed, Cheltenham left-handed. What do we see him lately? Newcastle. I think he's very versatile.
So do I. Talking about putting on their head, that makes me worry about Ahoy Senor. If we think back to him versus Brave Man's Game in the Quarter Star last year, he just didn't look like he liked Kempton at all. And Lucinda Russell's reasoning for going to the King George rather than the Roland Merrick was that she thinks it's probably going to be a smaller field. He's a Grade 1 horse. He should be in a Grade 1 race. If he finishes in the first 4, he can keep the Gold Cup dream alive. He's been keen the last twice.
Yeah, I wonder just let him off though.
Go on.
Just let him off. He's been keen, but I think I'd be letting him off rather than having the row with him. How much faster is he actually going to go when he stops pulling?
Well, it'd be interesting that I see that point absolutely. Don't restrain him, just let him go. Funny enough, this prompted a conversation as well amongst the roadies. Richie says as long as they're super aggressive, don't give up the lead to anyone. He reckons he's jumping the wrong obstacles. This has prompted a conversation about whether this horse should be actually heading for the Stayers Hurdle, which is going off at left field, isn't it?
Yeah, that is definitely going off in left field. But like, I wouldn't be too worried about the position for a high senior. It's about the pace. It wouldn't matter to me whether he was first or he was fifth, as long as he was just barely on the bridle, not pulling out him. I think if you're pulling out him, you're going too slow, and obviously if you're pushing him, you're going too fast. But I would just have him barely on the bridle. But the position wouldn't bother me. It'd be more about the speed and the pace. I'm
slightly concerned about. I think Eldorado Allen might be best going left-handed. We haven't seen Royal Pagay for a while. He has won over the course and distance over in a much lower grade. He was meant to be coming back for the Betfair Chase. Any of the bigger prices catch your fancy at all?
No, they don't. Royal Pagay, I think he wants further. If you're worried about the track for any of these horses, to me, it would be him at this grade. I think he would want Haydock and Slow Ground to be competing at this level myself. No, I don't. I think it'll come down to Brave Man's Game and Lompresse, and I think it'll be a really interesting race to watch.
Go on. No, you colours to the mast. I think Lompresse is intrinsically a better horse than Brave Man's Game, but if Brave Man's Game's ever going to beat him, I think it'll be Kempton, because he's very suited to the track and he's a very nimble jumper.
Yeah, it'll be one I'll be watching.
Right, okay. I'll get you off the fence at some point during this show. Let's move on to the Savills Chase, shall we? And that is on the 28th of December at Leopardstown. And how do you see this race panning out, Ruby?
Well, there's not as much pace in this, Lydia, as there is in the King George. Kenboy will obviously go forward, but how forward will he go? And he jumps out to his right as well. So he's your only real pace angle. But he went, I suppose, decent enough gallop in the north. But look, you've Galvin and Statler. They're both Ronnie Bartlett's, and I would be surprised if they both turn up. I think Willie could be worried about the ground in Leopardstown for Statler, so he might end up going to Tremor. And then you have Conflated, and obviously the one we're all going to be watching, and that's a Plutar. And what will Rachel do? I think she'll ride him like she rode him at Haydock, but I don't think she'll do what she did last year. And that's when she got down to the third last fence, make that move up on the outside across to the second last fence and be in front turning in, and Galvin come back to beat her. So I think she will ride at Plutar patiently from behind, let the race develop in front of her. But I think Kenboy is the only pace angle, and I don't think that plays to Galvin's strengths. I think Galvin needs a much stronger pace to be galloping at than he's probably going to get in this. And I think this is a tactical race, and I think if Plutar is back to the horse we saw in Haydock or Cheltenham last year, even the horse that ran in Leopardstown last year, I think he'll win.
Yes, that was a sort of too big, too quick, too soon move, wasn't it? Last year, we were talking about it. Even that's how the prism through which he rode the Gold Cup as well, that rode him to victory. Henry de Bromhead has said that it was a travel-related illness, he believes, that caused the poor red in the Betfair Chase. The horse's bloods were fine when he left Henry de Bromhead's yard. He must have picked something up en route, and so from thinking that we might not actually see him over Christmas, here he is. So that's brilliant. Just thinking about the champion chase at Dan Royal, and in the scenario that you just described, which horses might come out best, surely it's going to suit the horse that actually shaped best in that contest, Conflated.
Yeah, you would imagine so. You would imagine so. It'll be just interesting to see what way jockey arrangements go. Davy's retired. That obviously means Jack could ride Conflated or Galvin, so it'll be interesting to see. And Jack has a soft spot for Fury Road, so it'll be interesting to see which one Jack Kennedy rides, and that'll give you an indication as to what I suppose they think is going best at the moment. But Conflated, he did shape best in the north. I don't know. Conflated has to do it again for me. I think Davy Russell won a Gold Cup on him. I'm not sure Conflated won.
I get that point. And also, if we're talking about horses that are intrinsically the best, it's got to be a Plutar, hasn't it?
Yes.
At that field. And he is the 6-4 favourite ahead of Conflated in second in at 11-4. If you had the choice that Jack Kennedy is going to have, where would you go, Ruby?
I was disappointed with Galvin in Down Royal, so I'd be probably slow to ride him. And then when you're going on form, I think the only chance Fury Road, you know that?
Go on, expand a bit more on that.
I can know ratings would tell you he's too far behind Conflated. He's a 155 to a 168, and it looks plainly obvious then that you should ride Conflated. But is there one in here that could improve to be the top level horse?
Yeah,
he's the one. I don't think Conflated is that horse. I don't believe Galvin is quite that horse. If there's one in there that could be the improver, it's Fury Road.
Yeah, I'm nodding away to that argument. I can see it, absolutely. Right, let's drop by a mile in trip, shall we, and consider the Rewards Club Chase. This is on the 27th of December at Leopardstown, and hopefully it will see the return of Chacun Pessoir, who was withdrawn from this race this time last year when he was lame. He's won it in 2020, and he's finished second to a certain Plutar the year prior to that.
Yes, that's how good a horse a Plutar is. Grade 1 winner at both levels. So what do I think? Chacun, yeah. And I think this could be a strongly run race. I think Chacun, that's the way that Paul is riding him and Patrick rode him lately, is jump and use his gallop and let him bowl, use his jumping. But I think Captain Guinness, he didn't stay behind Riviera de Tel for long in the fourth trio. He pulled his way to the front with Rachel going to the second. He'll definitely add pace to this race, and I think that will suit Blue Lord. I could see Blue Lord sitting in like he did in Clonmel, watching the whole thing develop in front of him. It's not the deepest Grade 1 that's going to be run at Christmas, but looking at how the race could shape up, I'd probably be fancying Blue Lord.
Yes, I can see that. I can see that very much. There's talk of both Chacun Pessoir and Blue Lord going up in trip this season, so they could be relevant for the Ryanair. Willie was even talking about maybe going up to 3 miles with Chacun Pessoir this season eventually.
Yeah, possibly. But I think 2 miles and 1 at Leopardstown is a very stiff 2 miles and 1. There's only 2 fences in the last 5 furlongs. I do think it suits stairs, and often even with novices, you can think, oh, he's at the winning 2 miles in Leopardstown or winning the Arkle in Leopardstown, and he would actually be too slow for the Arkle in Cheltenham. But and I think it's the same here. They are stairs, but Blue Lord and Shackleton are looking like stairs. And I think this track suits them, and that's where they might do Captain Guinness, because even the 4-3 is a rarity in Navan. It's the dead 2 miles, so it starts with your back behind the third last fence, second last is first, whereas most other chases in Navan are 2 miles and 1, and you jump the third last first. So flat 2 miles probably suits Captain Guinness. I think 2-1 could just be stretching.
Okay, so those are our thoughts of the key chases, open chases at Grade 1 level over the Christmas period, and this time next week we'll be reflecting on what happened.
Hello and welcome to another of our racing quizzes.
Are you for real? Like that's
Yeah,
it?
exactly. If you'll hold your horses.
My God, it's right. Some stage today.
Nobody's listening to me.
84.
Well done, Frank.
You're away.
You're watching, Dave.
It took about half an hour. Incorrect.
Welcome to the ice cream.
You have to know your audience. So she actually gave a wrong clue and they got the wrong answer.
I know.
Now it's time for the first of 2 viewer video questions this week. And the first one is from Grant James Thomas. Take it away.
Hi Lydia, Ruby and the rest of the team. I hope you're all keeping well and looking forward to the festive feast of action that's heading our way. However, with all the racing that's been missed so far this season, and with a view to Cheltenham, what is your position regarding novices? When a horse is tackling a new discipline, whether it be hurdles or fences, I personally prefer to see them at least 3 times before heading into the heat of the festival. By that point, I feel like we can get a handle on their form and assess their technique under pressure. However, I also feel like we've seen a limited number of novices so far this season, and considering some have only reappeared this week, surely they are all running out of time to get that sort of experience under their belt before Cheltenham. I'd love to know both of your thoughts on the subject. Would you have any concerns? Thank you for taking the time to assess this, and I wish you, the rest of the roadies, a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
And a happy Christmas and a happy New Year to you as well, Grant, and all the roadies out there. Right, Ruby, what did you think of his question? What's your view?
I would agree with him, and the circumstances are just differently. You would love that your second run would be a Christmas, not your first run, but that's the way it's just happened with frost and then a dry autumn, but everyone's sort of going to be in the same boat.
Yes.
So that's the other side of the coin. Like, and or if you run now, where is your next run? So you're looking at, for say, Appreciated, and Fabiola, all those horses started this week. So you're probably talking either the Killiney or the Dublin Racing Festival. And then do you run again? You could be forced to run again if something happened, if you had a mishap, if a horse fell, something doesn't go according to plan. You could be forced into a third run. It would look like a lot of them are going to go with 2 runs by March, and then their fourth run would be third run Cheltenham, fourth run Punchestown. That sort of thing. But of course you'd love it, but it's just not going to happen this year.
From your perspective, if you're riding in a Grade 1 novice chase at the Cheltenham Festival, what did you have a view about how much experience the horse you were riding should have had?
I wouldn't have said rule of thumb 3 runs, but I would definitely have, when I was riding them in the previous runs, made sure they not made a mistake, but that they knew how to do it themselves. I tended to ride the race at Grade 1 level and let the horse do the jumping, and therefore they had to be taught that in a beginner's chase or schooling at home. I always was in the camp of let the horse do the jumping and I'll ride the race.
I like to see in the preparation them not to have sort of had a procession around, for them at least to have jumped up sides and to have jumped under pressure against another horse. Like, that's for me going into the cauldron of Cheltenham or Aintree or Punchestown, Leopardstown, all those Grade 1s. I'd like to have seen that going into it, so I know I can rely on the horses jumping in that scenario.
I know that's but that's looking at it from a punting point of view. I want to know the answer of what's going to happen before I get there. But look, I never thought of it that way. But to me, there were certain horses you rode, you thought this is going to jump whatever happens, and then there were other horses you were thinking this needs 4 more runs, and I'm not sure it's going to operate the way I want it to operate. So look, different horses are different ways, but ideally, yeah, of course you would love to have 3 runs before March time, but it's not going to be this year.
Okay, so thanks for your question, Grant, and it tees us up nicely for the next section, which is the novice chasers. Let's kick on with the novice chasers then. And we've had some really interesting action already this week. That's even before all the significant grade ones over Christmas. We've seen 3 horses with much anticipated chase debuts. I'm thinking about Appreciate It, Flame Bearer, El Fabiolo, all from Willie Mullins's yard, all of whom many of the roadies have been talking about and making the case for being the top novice this season. Let's go through them one by one. Let's start with Appreciate It, who made his chase debut at Punchestown on Monday.
Yeah, he did 2 miles. Obviously, Top Bandit jumped out with him. They didn't go mad. Gallop down to the first fence. Appreciate It goes to his left, gets quite high and bumps off Top Bandit in the air. But he was much better at the second fence. But I did notice him on landing away from the third fence up to the bend past the stands. Like he didn't want to turn. Paul had to really anchor him to get him around the bend. But he jumped the fourth fence good and quick. But there ain't nothing much happened. I thought Jack Kennedy gave Top Bandit a great ride. He just left Paul Townend in front of him and he pulled out to have one go at him. And they did race down over the last 2 fences and Appreciated was good at the second last. But when they were flying to the last and Paul asked him for a big one, Appreciated decided not to, shimmied in and got himself out of it. So there's your jumping under pressure question, Lydia, from a few minutes ago. Appreciated has shown it in a beginner's chase. I thought it was pleasing. Thought it was a slowly run race. I think a better race would really suit Appreciated, actually.
And distance-wise, what were you thinking? Because he'll have options at the Cheltenham Festival, won't he?
Yeah, and I thought he looked like a horse that you don't need to make a decision about. To me, he looked like he could easily go up to 2.5 miles if you wanted to.
Yes. It was. I think for me, this was the most pleasing of the 3 that we're going to discuss here in terms of chase debut. Let's move on to Flame Bearer. He was defeated on chase debut, and instead the race was won by Journey With Me, who it was good to see actually completing.
Yeah, especially after his first start in Goran Park. But look, the first fence, did Flame Bearer blow you away at any point in this race? I don't think so from a jumping point of view anyway. He was okay at the first, but not overly convincing. Second fence, he was long, but you didn't think, wow, look at the power. It was long. You were thinking, is he going to get there? Third fence, Flame Bearer was okay, but even got to the fifth fence, Journey With Me was quite slow at it, and Flame Bearer winged by him. It was 1 over 1 back. The ninth fence, Flame Bearer was very awkward at it, and he just capsized when he turned into the home straight. Journey With Me came at him to the second last, and it's all over that stage. Paul Townend, it looks to me like he's sitting on nothing, and by the time he lands that he is. But then what does Journey With Me do at the last? I'm not sure what it did. It got from one side to the other. How it looked like he ramped the jump actually instead of jumping it, and ran up it, and he kept galloping away to the line. It was good to see him win. I was actually probably more impressed with Journey With Me watching it the second time. The first time I watched it, I thought these are walking and it's taking them all day. But when I watched it back, I actually thought he kept galloping away. He looks like a horse that would get a lot further.
Okay. And then there was El Fabiolo, who made his debut at Fairyhouse on Wednesday. This quickly developed into a bit of a school round because he had an unchallenged lead from the first.
He did, and he was good. He was slick at the first, and he was safe at the second. But when he rounded the bend up to Ballyhack, he hit the fourth some thump, and you can see how high his hind end goes from the camera we're looking at. Then he went to the third last. Actually, because they were so strung out, it's hard to tell how they were jumping on the far side because they only looked like dots on the screen anyway. You were that far away from them. But at the fourth last, I couldn't tell you. It looked okay. Third last, he was very good. 2 out wasn't spectacular. Landed on all fours, kind of ran out through it. The last was an okay jump. Like he won with a lot of authority, but to me, when you looked at him, I kind of thought, yeah, you have a big engine, but your jumping does need to brush up. I thought Appreciated was much more professional jumping wise than El Fabiolo.
Yeah, I agree. I suppose Appreciate It's older. Then there's maybe much more improvement in El Fabiolo. I didn't think any of these performances would have been worrying John Bon and Nicky Henderson. I mean, I don't think they were even as slick as John Bon's chase debut, let alone his win at Grade 1 level. No,
they weren't. But I think definitely El Fabiolo has a lot to do jumping wise compared to John Bon, and Appreciated. I think he just did what he had to do, and I actually liked him. The sprint that got into down over the last 2 fences. I loved Appreciated at the last time, how clever he was to get out of the situation he was in.
Just looking at the impact on the anti-pest markets for the Cheltenham Festival before we have a look at the key action over Christmas. John Bon is the 11-8 favourite for the Arkle. Best prices these are. Appreciate It 5s. He was put in as second favourite, but when El Fabiolo made his debut, in some books he is now second favourite. It can be 11 to 7 to 2, but you can also get 11 to 2 if you shop around. And Phil Dorr, remember him. He is 12-1. Gordon Elliott's Mighty Potter, it heads the Turners novice chase anti-post betting at 4s, and then El Fabiolo 10s, Appreciated 12s. Again, these are best prices. Okay, well, let's have a look at the key action this Christmas, because it should sort out some pecking orders and maybe sort horses for different distances as well. We're going to start with the brand new Racing Post at Novice Chase. That's at Leopardstown on St Stephen's Day, for which Phil Dorr is a short price favourite ahead of stable companion Hollow Games at this point. How do you see this race panning out in the early stages?
I'd like to see the app change back to the old one for a start. That'd be a good start.
Explanation.
How do I see the race panning out? Look, Midnight Run is a big price horse in here, but he will put pace in it. He will go forward. I would be surprised if Willie runs Dysart Dynamo on this. I think he'll run him in the beginners. And you've San Roy then in Hollow Games. San Roy made it in Navan and Field Door followed him. Would that be the same again? Possibly. Or will they change with San Roy and Hollow Games? Obviously, he made all at Navan. So I think Midnight Run, Hollow Games, they'll be the ones going forward. Be interesting what way they ride San Roy. But I was taken by Field Door at Navan. And I'd be siding with him in that.
Yeah, I will too. He's got £6 weight for age from the rest of them, and he strikes me as pacier than Hollow Games at this distance. And Hollow Games seems to me to be a horse that will do better as he goes up and trip this season.
I think so, but it's just that 2 miles and 1 at Leopardstown.
Yes.
And I won Arkles and horses, and you go to Cheltenham. I keep repeating myself, but it's a stayers race too now. I wouldn't be worried about a horse that you think wants a little further at Leopardstown.
And when you said about Senoir, you'd be interested to see how they ride him.
I wonder would they like he jumped and went from the front at Navan and he didn't repel Field Door. When you get beaten once, do you try something different? I wonder would they ride him for speed, come from behind Field Door. Just a thought. Yeah,
I get that. And Midnight Run, in many ways, he sort of sets the greatest standard going into this. I feel he's going to be eclipsed here. He's a second season novice. This will be his 9th chase start. I know he's won a Grade 2, but I feel these are the next horses coming through, the sort of the wave of horses that will be dominating the spring festivals.
I think so too, but he'll bring them a good gallop, and that will suit Hollow Games, Field Door. It'll allow San Roy to settle. I think he's a good addition to the race.
And how has Dysart Dynamo been schooling?
Very good. They were delighted with him on Monday, I think it was.
Okay. So, and you're expecting him to be more likely to go for the beginner's chase. Presumably, he's just here just in case this cuts up massively.
I just think really it's a long time since he ran a novice, first time in a Grade 1. Yeah. I think it was Michael Dagenais actually. That didn't work out.
Let's move on to the Faheen novice chase. Same day, but the venue is Limerick. That is how they bet at the moment, with Jerry Colombe, the odds-on favourite, Kilcrut next in. How do you see this?
Well, Gordon said the other day if he ran Mighty Potter, the only place he would run him is in this race in Limerick. So it'll be interesting to see if he runs. There's plenty of stayers in here, but there's not an obvious front runner. 2.5 mile start up the back straight in Limerick, a lot of jumping straight in front of you. I think Kilcrut will be on the pace. I thought he jumped really well at Punchestown. Jerry Colombe at Fairyhouse, he sat just behind the pace, and he looks a really stout stayer, Jerry Colombe. He will love something to be dragging him along. Mighty Potter, we watched him at Fairyhouse. He was up there on the pace, but he kept slowing it down. That wasn't a fasty run race, and Gaillard and Neil was in that race in Fairyhouse. He was dropped in, so I don't see this being really strongly run, yet there's horses in who needed to be strongly run, and that's Jerry Colombe in particular.
It can often be a real stamina sapping contest because of the ground that it's running.
Limerick can be at Christmas, but they're giving it a bit drier this year than in years gone by. So, having said that, it's not a climate. It is a climate of its own, Limerick.
So, how do you see this panning out? You've said that the scenario is tricky in terms of pace and the type of horses that are in it.
I just think that the one who has done least wrong in his life is Jerry Colombe. I think he could be the improver if it's far enough from.
Okay. Right, let's move over to Britain next and have a look at the Quarto Star novice chase. This is the Grade 1 over the King George course and distance of 3 miles. And that is how they bet at the moment. How do you see the Quarto Star panning out?
It depends on what Paul does, really, doesn't it? Chelino Bello and Mac Fabulous, they're, to me, are the two front runners. But I can't imagine that if he runs both, Paul, he's both declared he's on Chelino Bello. I can't imagine the two of them will take each other on. So I imagine Harry Cobden will make the run on Mac Fabulous. Ballygriffin Cottage and Chelino Bello will sit right behind him. And I think they'll drop Time Hill in behind that. I think when you watch Mac Fabulous at Newbury, he did enjoy it in front. I know Chelino Bello made it at Exeter, but that was a 2-horse race. Someone had to make it. So I'd imagine Mac Fabulous will make it. And even if you watch a Ballygriffin Cottage, he followed Beauport at Haydock. So I think he'll be happy enough to follow Mac Fabulous as well. And I think Time Hill will drop in. But I think Mac Fabulous will make it. I didn't think I'd say this when I watched him beat an Unexpected Party at Exeter, but I think he could actually win it.
Really?
Mm.
I wasn't so convinced with that. I mean, the thing about this race is usually you've got more of a handle on what the horses have achieved because they've been in bigger fields, they've faced more rivals. Because of the weather, we've had a series of small fields and slightly one-sided contests. So for me, this is very much up in the air, much more up in the air than usual.
Yeah, it is. And that's what makes it interesting, I think. We've had, I don't know, you might moan that we've had a lot of one-sided races, but now you have the 3 or 4 winners meeting. And people will have a strong opinion. I don't have a massively strong one, and I'm on Mac Fabulous's side, and you're probably slightly against Mac Fabulous, but that's what makes debate, conversation. We don't know what's going to happen here.
I think he likes a handed track. He likes a flat track. There are lots of positives, and he seems to be perhaps better over fences. So maybe I'm just ignoring the obvious. I do like the progression of Ballygriffin Cottage. I do think he's interesting. He
is, and look, his hurdle form was quite strong as well. Like Blazing Cal beat him at Cheltenham. He obviously was 4th behind the nice guy in the Albert Bartlett. So look, he was a decent hurdler, and I thought Beauport had been very good at Carlisle first time up, so that was strong for him to go and beat him.
Okay, let's have a look next. Briefly, thoughts about the Neville Hotel's Novice Chase. That's at Leopardstown next Thursday. I say only briefly because, of course, we will be able to talk about this race on the day. More about Road to Cheltenham during the Christmas period later. But anyway, what's your view in the long-term view of the Neville's Hotel?
I don't have one. I looked at it and it's that far away. I was thinking, well, I'll wait and see what runs in Limerick before I contemplate what's running in the Neville, to tell you the truth. Yeah. That was my honest opinion on it.
From a Willie Mullins perspective, he could run Gaillard de Menil, he could run Classic Getaway.
He'd definitely run something. Probably, yeah, Gaillard, he left him in Limerick as well. Be interesting to see where he goes with him. Classic Getaway did look good at Gordon Park, so look, when his intention is to run as many as he can at Christmas, they only had one run, so if you can get him out again now, he'll be delighted. And that's hopefully Leopardstown's chase course is on the slow side.
Okay, let's have a quick look to sign off from this section about how the outpost markets for the Cheltenham Festival are looking. And the longer distance races, particularly the Brown and Risery, are much more unformed. There are a whole load of horses that are around about the 8 to 11 to 1 mark. So I think this is the division that is going to get the biggest shake-up over Christmas. And if you've got a view, you might want to take it now.
Yeah, was that the way anti-post markets should be?
It should be. The National Hunt Chase is a bit more one-sided with Gaillard de Menil with that classic profile for the race. He is the short price favourite for it, and he does look like a thorough stayer. So there'll be plenty to talk about this time next week. Now it's time for the second viewer's question, the video question from Ben Cottrell. Cue Ben.
Hi Lydia, hi Ruby. Big fan of the show. In light of the recent abandonments and lack of runners due to fast ground, how do we think this might affect the handicap hurdles in March, given that novices have to have run 4 times to run in Class 1 and Class 2 handicaps? Thinking this might have a big impact on the Martin Piping County hurdle especially. And do we also think that this might give us bigger field sizes in the Grade 1 novice hurdles? Thank you.
So I thought this was a really good question, Ruby, and it relates to the rule from the British Horse Racing Authority in October, where they said that in Class 1 or 2 handicap hurdles, open handicap hurdles, so non-juvenile, non-novice, you need to have 4 runs over hurdles. in order to be able to qualify for a mark. And that would have had an impact on last year's festival. For example, State Man wouldn't have been qualified to run in the county, but Banbridge, who won the Martin Pipe as a novice, that was on his 6th hurdle start, well, he would have qualified. So it is going to have an impact, isn't it?
It is, and I think that's the design, the way the rule was brought in. It'll have a bigger effect on the Betfair hurdle first than it will then have on Cheltenham. And the handicap hurdles are supposed to be for handicappers, so I can see why they changed the rule, and it will have the desired effect. But at the festival, I think it'll have the biggest effect on the Martin Pipe. I would think more novices running that than they do in the other handicaps. So it'll be interesting to see what, like, it's brought in for a reason, to try and push novices into novice races and let handicappers run in the handicaps. So we'll see if it works.
Yeah, I think, I mean, in terms of the motives behind it, I totally agree with this. I mean, State Man went and won a Grade 1 at Punchestown by 7 lengths to start after the county hurdle. Really, he should have been in the Supreme. And I think you want your best novices taking each other on in the best races. So I agree with this all. And I agree with you also. I mean, the handicappers, exposed handicappers, seasoned handicappers, are necessarily vulnerable to younger horses about whom the handicapper knows less, and so the mark is less likely to be representative of their total ability at that stage in their career.
I agree.
And you're right as well. Betfair Hurdle, that's the one that's really going to be affected first, because that is a race that has been dominated by novices.
And it's coming in February, so I think that'll be the first one that you'll see what effect it has, or you'll see the change in trend. I think that's the first place we'll see.
Yeah, agreed. And Ben's spot on. The exacerbation of the weather this season means it might have an even bigger impact than it would otherwise had. Great question, Ben. Right, now we need to crack on with the novice hurdlers, because there's been some significant action this week and we need to look ahead to certainly one key race over the Christmas period. But we'll start, Ruby, with the Cheltenham novice hurdle. That was transferred to Nace, and it was won by In the Pocket. What did you, how did you see how this finish panned out? Because I felt there were two potential interpretations.
Yeah, there was. Look, and it wasn't a strongly run race. Both of the Absolute Notions and 3-Car Bragg, they jumped out. They went an even enough gallop in front. Obviously, the 2 hurdles in the straight were bypassed on both occasions. So when they get back around to the 4th last, which is their 2nd last, you have Absolute Notions, 3-Car Bragg, Deeply Superficial, and In the Pocket. And across into the straight, then Jack is trying to build it up in front. Adrian Heskin's beside him, but Rachel Blackmore's running away in the pocket, in the pocket. Now, Adrian Heskin doesn't keep tight to Jack Kennedy, but when you look at how easily In the Pocket is travelling, he pulls his way through for Rachel Blackmore. So whether Adrian stayed beside Jack Kennedy or drifted away from Jack Kennedy, it was only which lane Rachel Blackmore was going to pick, because she was absolutely cantering. And by that gap opening and she goes into it, she's probably there sooner than she wants to be. And he does idle when he bypasses the last hurdle. Adrian Heskin stays out to the outside running rail. Rachel goes back in, and In the Pocket does get a bit lonely. I think 3-Car Bragg will improve again for stamina, probably would improve in a stronger run race. And I think he is one of those novices that will qualify for the Martin Pipe, because that's his 3rd start now. But yeah, look, you could say, why didn't Adrian stay stuck to Jack Kennedy? But when you look at it, did it really matter? I don't think it did.
I don't think it did. I think, if anything, if Rachel Blackmore had to go round and that had delayed the challenge of In the Pocket a little bit longer, he'd probably have won more snugly than he did. It all got a little bit desperate in the closing stages.
It did, and especially then when you're bypassing after going slow, you end up going too fast, too quick, too soon, and they all get tired. But look, 3-Car Bragg, I did love the way In the Pocket travelled and how strongly he was going when he went into the gap. You could see him maybe even going back into it.
I agreed. What did you make of the debut of Impesses, the debut in Ireland for Willie Mullins?
Yeah, he showed a lot more on the track than he was showing in Close Sutton. Sat in the mid-division, jumped the first grands, very good at the 2nd hurdle. Again, they were bypassing hurdles, so the 6th hurdle he landed in front. But it's what he did up the home straight when he was bypassing the hurdles. Paul let him go passing the 2nd last hurdle. And by the time he got to the last hurdle, he had put a huge distance between himself and the rest of them, and he went all the way to the line. It was 2.5 miles. It was a really good first performance, and they were strung out a long way. But it's kind of actually like Lydia in that he shows you more at the track than he's showing you at home. That's always a good thing.
he pulled out plenty, didn't he? And now he features fairly prominently in the anti-purse markets for the Ballymore, shorter than in the pocket does, actually. And if we move on to the Albert Bartlett betting, 3-card Bragg is the one that was shortened after that performance hinting at stamina when beaten by In the Pocket. But I take your point. The Martin Pipe could potentially be an alternative target for that horse. Let's look back on what the mares have been doing as novice hurdlers as well. And C'est La Vie won at Punchestown, that listed event.
Yeah, and Harmonia Maker, Bella Scintilla, they went a really good gallop early. Harmonia Maker sat in behind the pace. Bella Scintilla was up there. But if you jump forward a circuit almost, Harmonia Maker has switched places. She's gone forward and she takes it up at the 7th hurdle, and Bella Scintilla has dropped back. But Paul Townend was always watching behind. When they swung around up to the 3rd last hurdle, you can see how wide Paul stayed. And especially over the 2nd last end, Harmonia Maker's on the inside, Paul's on the outside. But watching it live, it always looked like Paul was quite close or up beside Jack. But you look at it on the camera, it looks like Jack's in front. But Harmonia Maker, who'd looked a really strong stare at Fairyhouse when she won, could never get away from these. And I thought C'est La Vie pulled out plenty. I thought it was a good performance. But I think we saw a mare in Nace then that was really taken compared to any of the rest of them.
And that horse, Ruby, is Halka de Tarbet. Goodness, she was impressive, didn't she? She galloped out all the way through that race.
But even the start of the race, Lydia, you see how aggressive Jack Kennedy was on her. Up to the 1st hurdle, Paul Townend had booked out on Ava Grace. Jack got up there and Halka de Tarbert, 4th hurdle, a brilliant jump. But the gallop they were going, I mean, you look at the head on to the 3rd last hurdle, like this field was stretched out nearly 2 furlongs. I think the pace the mare in front was going. Paul Townend gets to her going to the 2nd last on Ava Grace, but Halka de Tarbert just opens up again, and the further they were going, the further she was going to win. Good at the last and galloped all the way to the line. I thought it was she left an impression on me now. I thought she went a really strong gallop, and you'd love the way she kept going.
Yeah, I mean, she looks like a real strong stayer, but you need stamina for 2 Mile Wool on the new course at Cheltenham if they are minded to go in that direction.
You most certainly do, but Jack does make the running sporadically, but he was hell-bent on going a proper gallop on her.
I was really impressed. With her. How about Liberty Dance, who, of course, was the sign-off ride for Davy Russell at Thurles? What did you make of her win in listed company on Sunday?
I did think she was good. You can pick her up going to the 1st hurdle. She's a little bit keen with Davy. The Model Kingdom was the big market rival. She dropped in behind her. She jumped well, Liberty Dance. I did notice in Thurles on Sunday, for whatever reason, there was no hurdle across the top of the track. So it was a long run from the 3rd last to the 2nd last, and Davy let her roll across the top, and that probably dragged the Model Kingdom. Brian Cooper had to go chasing, but she was really good at the 2nd last, Liberty Dance, and Davy sent her down the hill then to the last hurdle. She was good at that, and she did pull clear from the last home with Belle the Lioness running on from the back under Rachel Blackmore. But I thought it was a good performance, and Thurles is a fast track, so if you can be winning impressively at Thurles, it's usually a good performance.
Okay, well, let's have a look at the impact on the Dawn Run Mares novice hurdle. Lucia, the Newbury winner for Nikki Henderson, she is still the favourite. Ashrow Diamond's prominent. There are Liberty Dance, Halka de Tarbet as well. I do want to mention Magical Zoe, because the wins from C'est La Vie and Liberty Dance both franked her down royal form from November. C'est La Vie was 5th behind her, Liberty Dance was 6th behind her. I thought Magical Zoe did really well to win that day, and she's still available at 10-1 for this contest.
She did, but Magical Zoe and C'est La Vie had an advantage on Liberty Dance that day. That was Liberty Dance's first run, wasn't it? Even over hurdles. So I'd say it was a good first run from her. And yeah, of course you have to form is form, but I think Liberty Dance has improved a lot from downright.
Okay. Let's move on and have a look at the future champions novice hurdle, shall we? This is run at Leopardstown on the 27th of December, and a certain Facile Vega is heavily odds on to win it, ahead of Irish Point, who so far has been in deeper than Facile Vega, and Facile Vega's stable companion Il Était Temps is also in the race. First of all, how do you see this race panning out?
It's hard to know. Like Facile Vega, we watched him at Fairyhouse. He didn't go that quick. He made the run and he had it all his own way. Il Était Temps wears a hood, won at Thurles, made the running. So will Il Était Temps jump out and go in Leopardstown? Probably will. Facile Vega could sit in behind, and then you have Irish Point. So if you look at the Royal Bond, of course, Irish Point sat in at the back, and Astro Diamond is in the Future Champions, was in the Royal Bond as well, and she was quite keen at the back that day. Whether Internet will run or not, I don't know. But the plan is for Facile Viga to go there. And yeah, I could see Let de Temps making it, but I can see what everyone else can see.
Yeah, but you know, the Irish Pointers at this stage over hurdles has been in deeper, done more, and as we were arguing that you could mark him up in that Royal Bond, which was very strongly run. They went on from a very long way out, and he picked up the pace quite early in the closing stages.
He did, and he's a fair horse. It was only his second start over hurdles as well, so it is a completely different ballgame for Facile Viga, but.
Well, I'm getting the vibes. I think everybody else has got the vibes. I mean, this horse, if we have a look at the anti-post market...
I can make a case for Irish Point if you want them. Make a case for Let de Temps if you want me to, but like...
You don't believe it?
No, I don't.
Well, there we go. And neither does the market, neither does the anti-post market for the Supreme, for which with Paddy Power, he is the even money anti-post favourite. I think that is a ridiculous price based on what he has done so far. Reputationally, potentially, I certainly get it, but this is a significant test, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. Now we're going to sign off by talking about the significant Open Grade 1 hurdles over the Christmas period. We have Kempton's Christmas hurdle to talk about, Ruby. How do you beat Constitution Hill? I just don't see a way to do it. He's so versatile.
Neither do I. How do you beat Constitution Hill? You have to hope Nico de Bonneville goes the wrong course.
Ha! I just don't see that happening. So we're
neither do I. So that's why we haven't discussed this at any great length, Lydia, because there is not much to discuss.
And we are not going to discuss the Masterton hurdle because, as I hinted earlier on in the show, we will be having a Road to Cheltenham live at Leopardstown next Thursday morning before racing. So that's when we'll be talking about the rematch between Stateman and Sharjah. But we do need to talk about the Jack de Bromhead Christmas hurdle, the 3-mile Leopardstown version. How do you see that being run, Ruby?
It'll be interesting. I think Florian Porter will make it. Obviously, last year he missed the break there. Or Classical Dream got a flyer, whichever way you want to look at it. So I do think Florian Porter will go forward. I think the interesting one will be Bob Ollinger. Does he go here or does he go to the Matheson on Thursday? Classical Dream, I'd imagine he'll follow Florian Porter again. I'd be surprised if they go and take him on. But I think Florian Porter go along in front, and I think he could be hard to get by as well. That's another favourite after tipping.
I'd love to see Bob Ollinger drop to 2 miles. That's where I'd really like to see him run. But let's see.
I wouldn't disagree.
So we need to talk about the long walk as well, which has been rescheduled from Ascot and is going to be run on Boxing Day at Kempton. Kempton makes things interesting, different track for the rematch between Champ and Paisley Park. How do you see that?
I think it probably suits Champ. John Joe was brave on him at Newbury, gave him a brilliant ride, but Kempton, faster track, it'll be easier to do that again at Kempton than it was going to be at Ascot. So I think it'll be harder for Paisley Park as he's getting older. Miranda is the new one in there. She'll sit behind Paisley Park, behind Champ anyway. She sat in behind Molly's Ollie's Wishes when we last saw her. That was a good performance from Miranda that day. And she beat Martello Sky and Molly's Ollie's Wishes a long way, but I think it'll really suit Champ around Kempton.
2 other new ones as well, Not So Sleepy and Goshen, trying 3 miles for the first time. You've got your Christmas present. Be interesting to see.
Best of luck, Gary. Best of luck, Gary Moore. I hope he wins for you.
Absolutely. Best of luck to Gary Moore and everyone over the Christmas period. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed our Christmas preview and reflection on the racing so far this week. If you need more, you can go to the column, which is on www.racingtv.com/Road to Cheltenham. Cue Ruby. No new joke. No.
Happy Christmas, Lydia.
Happy Christmas to you, Ruby, as well. Happy Christmas to all you roadies, and make sure you join us live either at Leopardstown or via the TV for Road to Cheltenham next week. But for now, it's goodbye.
The home of jump racing. This is where the magic happens. Feel like a Cheltenham favourite with Paddy Power.
Subscribe to Racing TV's YouTube channel now to watch more great races like this.